All right. Well, thank you so much again for taking time out of your day for this interview.
Thank you for having
Um,
me.
yes, you're welcome. And congratulations on your new and first book. That must be super exciting. So I want to know a little bit more about what your experience was like as a Black woman working in a whitewashed magazine world.
Wow. Well, I worked at Vibe magazine before I ever went to Rolling Stone magazine. And so Vibe was, I would say 98% black. And so it felt like home. I'm born and raised in Harlem, which is a world famous black enclave. Of course, the great Harlem Renaissance, one of the greatest literary movements of the 20th century, was spawned there. And so it's interesting because although I grew up in an all black community, my first forays into fashion and into advertising were in all white spaces. So the majority of my career was actually spent working in entirely white spaces. I worked at Vibe magazine for 5 years, but the rest of my time in fashion and in advertising was really spent in predominantly white spaces. So when I got to Rolling Stone magazine, um, I was very disconcerted to find out that a music magazine in 2005 still was not even dealing with the fact that hip hop and black music were the predominant leaders, cultural leaders, right? And so that was a little bit like a red flag. Like, I can't believe this. Like, it's 2005. It's not like it's 1985 where hip hop is still new and they think it might be a trend. It's like by 2005, you already know this music is here to stay and it's been here for decades. And so you would think they would have gotten with the program. So that was really kind of weird and disconcerting. But I have to say, because I had spent the majority of my career working in all white spaces, it was not shocking to me to find that I had to deal with microaggressions around race and also around gender as well, because I was the
Mhm.
only woman on the sales team.
Mm. So, tell me about the day in Milan you had the realization you hit rock bottom. What do you think triggered that breakdown?
The moment in my life when I realized that I needed to change my life came to me when I was in Milan. I had just landed. I was there for the fashion shows, and it was a very fabulous time. I had a car and driver. I had all these gifts from all the major designers sent to my hotel room, and when I got there, I just realized that I was really thoroughly depressed, and I just didn't want to continue to live my life in that same way. What was really tough about that is that, I had spent probably at that point 15 years trying to get to that space, right? Trying to become that person that I saw in the mirror when I was in Milan. I had spent many years dedicated to be Beverly Smith, fashion advertising executive. And so to have the realization that that was some armor that I wanted to take off and that I never wanted to put back on was a really tough time for me. But ultimately, I made it through, and I then began to change my life slowly but surely.
Well, then that leads me into my third question. So, can you tell me a little bit about this paradox of living a luxurious yet unfulfilling life? Like, what were those emotions that you were feeling?
I wrote down on a pad in the hotel room, "Fashion kills." I was definitely being really melodramatic, but at the time, it felt very real. I felt like the business of fashion was choking me, was stifling me. I felt that it was really a very abusive space to live in, to work in. And I just felt like for that it was beautiful on the surface, but like if you just scratch it, you don't have to dig. If you just scratch the surface of the fashion business, you saw a mean, catty business that was built and fueled on people's insecurities, primarily women's insecurities.
Mm. Yeah, that's one of the things that scares me about fashion.
But you know what
um,
though, if that's something that you really want to do and want to go into, don't let that deter you because out of fashion, I've met so many incredible people. I have so many really epic skill sets that I can attribute to being in the fashion business for all those years, and I still do love it. I had to take a step away from it for many years, and now I never want to work in it ever again in the way that I once did, but I still love having my toe in it.
yeah, of course. So what did you change in your lifestyle that helped you redirect your life towards one full of meaningful creativity and freedom? And how has that influenced the way you currently live your life now?
I began journaling and I began traveling by myself. And those are two things that I still do to this day. Journaling really helped me get out of my head and it helped me to really start learning how to put my thoughts down on paper. And it was the one place where I could be really honest. Sometimes you
Mhm,
can't even say the words, you know what I mean? Sometimes being incredibly honest with even just yourself is tough enough. But when you
mhm,
have to bear your truth to people, even as if it's people that you love and that love you, it can you can still live in fear of judgment. So I found that journaling was a great way for me to finally express the real me. And solo travel really helped me because it gave me a chance to go back to the core of who I am, which is a persona that I call Little Brown Bevy, and I was able to tap back into Little Brown Bevy when I would travel by myself and just like see the world through her eyes.
So who is Lulu Brown Bevy?
Little Brown Bevy is the best part of me. She's the core of me. In my book, there's
Mhm,
a chapter called The Red Soul Proposition. And I ask
mhm,
folks to do this little test. And it's like, answer who you are at your core. How are you being perceived? How would you like to be perceived? And for me, when I'm talking about Little Brown Bevy, that's who I unearthed when I did my digging, when I did my excavating. And I found out that, the best parts of me are the parts that I had buried for so long. It's the curious, shy, adventurous, empathetic girl who is a little left of center, but who really has a very big heart, has a very big intellect, and ultimately has a real lust and curiosity for life. And that's a really, I think all those attributes are really far better than the kind of personas that I had created.
mhm. No, yeah, I relate to that a lot, the journaling aspect. I also started journaling more regularly
Mhm.
since last summer. And I too feel like I'm clear about who I am and like what I want to be, what I want to do in life. So I also think journaling is a really great way to be honest with yourself and like with the things that are going around you. You could even like make notes to yourself like, hey, like this is going on.
Oh, I did
I
that all the time.
this many days.
Yeah, I did that all the time, Lisa. I would like challenge myself when I would journal as well. Yeah, so I get you.
Mhm. Yeah, I do that too. So, what piece of advice would you give someone who is walking in your footsteps today?
Um, be be brave, dare to dream, um, be resolute in what it is that you want out of your life. Do not let anyone dictate to you who you are, because people are always so quick to tell you who you are, what you're good at, and all that kind of stuff. And there could be, complete value in that. People told me when I wanted to quit, my big job as a fashion advertising director, like don't do that. You're really good at this. That's silly. And I was like, I'm really good at that, but I'll also be really good at this thing I'm going into. And I knew that to
Mhm,
be so. And so that's what I would tell folks is that, you have to be the captain of your own ship and you have to determine who you are and who you're going to be in this world versus letting anyone else and their idea of who you are kind of shape your life.
amazing. When the cameras go off and the lights are no longer on, who is Bevy Smith?
I think she's Little Brown Bevy. I think I really do go back into that core part of me. I mean, I think about who I am when I'm traveling, where and when I'm traveling alone. It's so funny because people often think, "Oh, yeah, you travel by yourself, but you're so outgoing, so you must meet a lot of people." And it's like, I could meet a lot of people. I don't care to meet a lot of people because when I'm on those trips by myself, I love, love, love to be isolated, and I also love the anonymity that you experience where you can go somewhere in the world where no one knows who you are, and oftentimes you don't speak the language, they don't speak your language. I love that. And so for me, that's what happens when I'm by myself as well. Like, I'm just, my home is very quiet. It does not have a lot of, like, I'm not the person that's going to have a lot of TV on and radio and music and all this kind of stuff. I like quiet. I like to pick up a good book, and I like to have a little glass of champagne and, maybe make myself some food and, that kind of thing. But it's real chill over here. And that's really what goes down when I'm by myself.
That's awesome. So, what is something that readers will learn about you in Bevelations that you have never shared publicly before?
Wow, there's a lot of stuff in there. I think most people don't know that I was engaged 2.5 times. And then something else I think is that a lot of people don't know that I didn't graduate from college. I attended NYU, but I didn't graduate. And I think something else that most people don't know that they can find out when they read the book is that I'm very passionate about art and architecture. And those are not things that traditionally have come up in my life and in my career. And so a lot of people don't know that. So, yeah, those are three things.
What did you major in at NYU?
Marketing.
Marketing? I go to NYU,
Oh, okay.
actually.
Hey,
Yeah, so
you're going to
yeah.
get your degree, though. My
Yeah.
publicist went to NYU. My other best friend went to NYU. I'm surrounded by NYU folks, and I'm
Mhm.
the one who didn't graduate, but we all wound up in the
That's
same place, so that's a good thing.
yeah. Um, so readers are already gushing over your ability to be your true authentic self through print. Being that this is your debut novel, how was it finding your voice as an author, and was it challenging at all to remain authentic while writing?
um, it was. I found my voice. I've been preparing for this for a very long time. So
Mhm.
I had when I was going through different things, like there's a chapter called Broke but Blissful. So when I had to, like, when I was going through financial hard times, I would like write in my journal, this is going to be really good for the book. When I turned down the opportunity to be in a Bravo show, and then I didn't get another show for another 7 years. I was like, that's going to be really good for the book. So I already had in my mind some stories that I wanted the book to have, but when I opened the book with the second chapter where I write about the ugly side of my beautiful life, and I opened it with what I felt was a very cinematic scene about me being in Milan and like feeling like lost and just alone. I definitely had that in my head written years before I ever put it on paper.
Mhm. Yeah, I also feel like that. Not so much kind of like me writing a book about my life, but I remember being little, I would always kind of just daydream about all of these different scenarios I'd like to happen, and then I'd be like, "Oh, that would be for a good book later
Right,
on."
exactly. So yeah, so I kept those ideas though.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so good. So, what is your advice to the people in their late 30s or early 40s that are currently reinventing themselves or making huge life/career adjustments?
The advice that I always give is that you've got to figure out why you're unhappy with your current situation, and if you've done that work, then you can move on to how you get to happy. And for me, I had to figure out what it was that I wanted most, and it wasn't a particular job. It was more a feeling that I wanted and a sensibility that I wanted. So I wanted creativity in my life every single day, and I wanted freedom.
Mhm.
Those were the two big things that I desperately craved because at a point I just hated having a job. Just ugh, made me so
Yeah.
unhappy. And so it was so great to have these moments where I was like, okay, so now I know why I'm unhappy at my job. I know how I'm going to get out of it, but now what am I running towards? And so for me now, I still take my temperature in that way. I'm like, okay, is this a an opportunity that will bring me creativity and freedom? If it is, then I'm gung ho. If it's not, then normally, unless it's a whole bunch of money, I'll say no.
Hmm.
And so to people that are looking to pivot and to change their lives and everything, I would say first you really have to identify what it is that you want out of your life. And it has to go
Hmm.
beyond the stuff. Like it can't be like I want to be rich, I want to be famous. Like what? No. It
Yeah.
has to be the real tangible things like what do you want to feel like every single day when you get up? Do you want to feel
Hmm.
inspired? Do you want, some people like a routine. I don't like a routine. So I like every day being different. I like kind of like feeling like you throw the balls up in the air and you see where they're going to land. I kind of like that feeling, but everyone's
Hmm.
different. Another
Yeah.
thing I would advise anyone to do is if you're going to look to change your life, please consult with a financial advisor. For me, I didn't, and that landed me in a lot of hot water. And so I would say that, one of my biggest mistakes, even though I don't regret it because I went broke, but because I went broke, I created a business called Dinner with Bevy, which in turn gave me amazing relationships that I would have never had with A-list celebrities like Kerry Washington and Pharrell and Idris Elba and different people like that. So it was good that I actually went broke. If I had consulted a financial advisor before I quit, I probably wouldn't have been forced to create that business. But
Hmm.
I also have I have a real propensity for risk. Like I'm not afraid of risk. And so you have to analyze that. Like, are you risk averse? Or do you have a high tolerance for risk? I do, so that works for me. And then the final thing I would say is that when you're looking to pivot and change your career, make sure that you're really pivoting into something that you're passionate about. You don't want to blow up your entire life. You don't want to throw away years of work that you've invested in a career that you currently have, or you know, um, a job that you have only to go into something and find out it's not what you want to do. I am so happy that I quit my job and 15 years later, I've had two, TV shows. I have a radio show. I've written lots of different magazine articles for great magazine outlets. And now I have a book. That makes me very happy. But moving
Hmm.
forward, those are not going to be the same things that make me happy. And so you have
Hmm.
to always do a check in with yourself and just make sure that you're re-upping your dream list and to make sure that the excitement is still there.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I would also say, like, maybe also being open minded and accepting, or like even like curious of maybe other
Yeah.
things that
Hmm.
maybe you've always been curious about but
Yeah.
never really gave it a chance.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those are very, very important things. Yeah.
um, so you mentioned in a recent interview that places you've worked in the past, such as Rolling Stone magazine, have a diversity problem. The problem is so bad that minorities struggle receiving entry level jobs. How do you see this changing over time, and do you feel as if there is a shift in companies wanting to hire more people of color?
Yeah. I mean, it was 2005 when I was at Rolling Stone, and the only black people there besides me was one editor and then mailroom people and security. They didn't even have a black receptionist. So that's obviously problematic. And no secretary,
Hmm.
and no support staff. So that's problematic. Of course, that's all
Hmm.
changing now. Now everyone's got, on their list that they want to hire somebody black, somebody brown, you know what I mean? And so that's good, but we still have to make sure that there are systems in place to help people succeed. Because if everyone at the top looks like the traditional white male archetype of what a boss looks like, it doesn't matter if you hire people underneath him to facilitate change, because you cannot make change in a company unless you have the endorsement of the person that's on top. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm always like, what does the diversity mean if it's not someone who controls the budget, if it's not someone who controls, kind of like the ethos of a company? You have to make those real significant changes. That's the reason why it's so important when we're talking about the lack of CEOs in Fortune 500 companies. That has to change. So I think a lot of it is lip service. Um, but I'm always very happy to see people be a part of I guess like what back in the day people used to refer to it as affirmative action hires. I guess now it's called diversity hires. But I think that if that's what gets you in the door, so that you can show up and show out and show and prove why you really do belong there, I said, take it.
Mm-hmm. So, what's your best advice for getting over writer's block?
Wow. You have to wait it out. Writer's block just hits when it wants to. For me, um, I try not to be anguished over it. Very rarely is a deadline. Um, there's always a little wiggle room, especially when writing a book. They'll be like, we
Mm-hmm.
have to have it X, Y, and Z. You're like, but do you really? Sometimes you need a little day or two to just kind of get over your writer's block. And also for me, I find that fresh air helps with a writer's block. Sometimes just stopping down and having a really good meal, not necessarily something heavy, but something that you absolutely love that you'll enjoy. Like sitting down at a real table with a real plate with real cutlery, that can help
Mm-hmm.
writer's block immensely, because it just takes you out of that space of like, what am I going to write? I owe these pages, whatever the story is. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, fresh air, a good meal. I've done massages before for writer's block. A dip in the ocean. I wrote part of this book when I took a little romp to San Juan, and it was really great to just go, get in the ocean, come back, and be replenished and ready to
Mm-hmm.
write.
So what's the best book you've read this year so far?
Just as I Am by Miss Cicely Tyson. I interviewed her right before she passed away, and I was so excited to interview her because I absolutely loved her book. I felt like her book was very raw, very honest. I felt like it was a look into a time gone by. Miss Tyson was 96 years old when she passed away, very similar to my parents' age. And so I know what it's like to live with history. So I was very excited to talk to her and to find out about her history and also to read her book. And so I think that Miss Tyson's book is a really great read for anyone who would like to know what it was like to be an artist, to be a creative in the 1950s through 2019. I mean 2021 when she passed away.
Mm-hmm. I'll have to read that book. It sounds interesting.
That was really good.
So what's the best advice you have received on happiness?
Wow, the best advice. I don't know. Anything I would say would sound like a cliche, but I've not necessarily received advice. I've observed people that seem to be very happy. And what I learned is that happiness is never derived from material things, ever. Like it's so nice to have, the nice things that you want, whether it's a car or it's clothes or bags or, spa treatments, whatever. That's all very nice. But that's not how
Mm-hmm.
you get to happy. How you get to happy is that when you're living a life that you feel fulfilled, when you feel like you're doing the work that you've been called to do, when you feel like you're actually, for me, challenging myself and doing something that I'm afraid to do, but I do it anyway. That to me is happiness.
Yeah, I agree. Um, So, do you plan on writing any more books in the future?
Yes, I do. I plan on writing a second book. I want to write a children's book, The Chronicles of Little Brown Bevy, and it will be my alter ego, Little Brown Bevy. She'll travel the world by herself, but she will have trunks with her because she always wants to look well put together and dressed appropriately no matter where she goes.
I love that idea. That's amazing.
Thank you. Much love.
Yes, much love. Have the best day and stay safe.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye.